Welcome to another OU Insider Portal Blitz. Parker Thune alongside Brandon Drum. Still just two commits on the board for Oklahoma
Mhm.
as we wake up on this Wednesday morning. Luke Baklenko, the transfer offensive tackle from Stanford, as well as Jacob Ulrich, the highly coveted punter from Kennesaw State. So you get a swing tackle, you get a punter. Understandably, Brandon, I think a lot of fans sitting there a little bit uncertain about what Oklahoma has already raked in the portal, but the avalanche seems to be coming. Obviously, the big one that's out there, the big one that everybody is waiting on, is of course John Mateer. But an interesting subplot there is if and when Mateer is officially locked in with Oklahoma, what kind of a Pied Piper effect do you see with the offensive skill positions? And that's probably where we start as we take a look at this receiver group. Names like
Yeah.
Jaron Bradley,
Mhm.
Keontez Lewis, Devontae Ross, formerly of Troy, 1,000 yard guy a year ago, Giovanni Gibson, himself a 1,000 yard guy, courtesy of Arkansas Pine Bluff, and then Isaiah Sategna, the outstanding Arkansas transfer as well. So the Sooners are going to take four. We know that. Four transfer wide receivers. I just rattled off five names. So
Mhm.
right there, you have an interesting case of A, who wants in, and if everybody wants in, who doesn't have a chair when the music stops?
Particularly on the wide receiver front, I got to tell you, I think things are going to speed up, and they're going to speed up fast. I would venture to guess right now, if you're Oklahoma, you're probably taking Giovanni Gibson. You're probably taking Jaron Bradley. You're definitely taking Isaiah Satania. So now you've got those three potentially in the boat. Um, and then that kind of leaves it up with Devontae Ross, maybe a Cam Vaughn out of Jacksonville State. There's a couple of guys that could go out. But yeah, I I think that's probably where you're leaning more so than not right now. And look, there's going to be other guys at the portal, so I think fans need to realize like this isn't the end all be all. So, and I think we should explain this to him, Parker, because people need to know that once a program's bowl game is over, it doesn't matter when your bowl game ended, you have 5 days afterwards to get in the portal and visit somewhere, 5, 7 days, something to that extent. So this portal window, even though it really closes on December 28th, those bowl games, those teams that are in bowls, this thing is going to roll all the way into February. That is something everybody needs to understand right now. This is a long way from being done if you are Oklahoma or anybody else across the country. So if things don't get filled the way you want them filled right now, they can be filled all the way up through February, and you can have your team for spring ball. And obviously, spring window opens up, and then it's a little bit quicker, but things are going to happen there as well.
No doubt, but obviously not something you want to bank on. You would like
No.
to be able to make sure you have most,
No.
if not all, of your bases covered before you're waiting on
Correct.
late portal entries from guys that are playing in the college football playoff or some of those New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, or even
Mhm.
after New Year's bowl games. And so, how the dominoes fall at the wide receiver position is something we'll be monitoring. Giovanni Gibson and Isaiah Sategna, probably, or Satania, excuse me, probably the two guys around whom there have been the most positive
Yeah.
buzz in recent days. Now, as we move to tight end, feels like Oklahoma's closing in on their guy at that position. And to my knowledge, it's only going to be one for Oklahoma. There had been a thought, and I think internally there's maybe a plan. Okay, if we can find two good ones, we're going to take two good ones.
Yeah.
But the good ones came off the board and came off the board to other schools. Tanner Koziel to Wisconsin, Luke McGarry to Tulsa, Jamari Johnson expected to land with Oregon. But Nebraska transfer Nate Borkature is a guy that has 1 year of eligibility remaining, former walk on, a native of Aurora, Nebraska, earned everything he was given for the Huskers. And the career stats for him are modest: 19 catches, 219 yards, one touchdown over 4 seasons as a Cornhusker. But he's got one more year, Brandon. Oklahoma offered. Oklahoma hosted him for a visit. And as we sit here, they are very much the team that is trending in
Yeah.
his portal recruitment. So would expect that Oklahoma fills a void there.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was what A&M is probably the other school that's looking at him right now. He would be a fantastic. He's was very underutilized at Nebraska. He can do everything. He's going to be able to block. He's going to be able to catch passes. I think if you're Oklahoma, if you're Ben Arbuckle, potentially John Mateer, I think that's somebody that you want because you have to have that check down guy. And right now, Oklahoma really doesn't have that guy. That they do, but they don't have that guy that is right experienced.
Well, and it's never sexy to add a blocking first tight end, and that's what Borkature is. He's a
Yeah, that's
blocking first
exactly what
guy,
it is.
but
Yep.
if the 2024 season taught you anything as an Oklahoma football fan, it's that it's nice to have a tight end out there who can block.
Yeah, there were a couple of touchdowns that were nullified to miss blocks by one Bauer Sharp, and I'm not going to hate on Bauer Sharp, but you need that blocking tight end. You need that guy that's going to be a road grader. You need somebody that you need a Nate Roberts or Jake Roberts, excuse me. You would love a Nate Roberts, but you got Jake Roberts, and you need one of those guys because they come in handy. And but Borkature, is that how you say it?
That is
Borkature?
correct. Good
Okay,
work.
no, thank you. He can play. He can do both. He's very, very solid in both. So I think he's a guy that fits Oklahoma very well right now. So if they end up landing him, I think that would be great. It would be a really solid pickup for Oklahoma. It's not the best, but it's really solid.
At offensive tackle, Luke Baklenko's on board. Don't have to worry about that. You got a guy
Yep.
that you can move around. He projects best to right tackle, 14 career starts. You don't have to turn him into a serviceable player. He is that. Can Bill Bedenbaugh turn him into a good or even great player? That will be where we see Bedenbaugh's developmental chops
Mhm.
on full display the next couple of years with Baklenko. But Western Carolina transfer Derek Simmons, another guy of note here. And he's had a real interesting journey. Spent a year at Tusculum in Tennessee, transferred to Abilene Christian, transferred again to Western Carolina. He's about to be a sixth-year senior. This is a one-year rental for Oklahoma, but he is one of the more highly coveted offensive tackle
Ah,
prospects in the entire transfer portal. And as it stands right now, the Sooners look to be in good shape with Derek Simmons.
they look to be in really good shape. He visited Colorado just I think the last few days. I don't know that that visit went as well as Colorado had hoped, but for Oklahoma, it went fantastic. Um, when he visited Oklahoma, everything seemed to be falling into place. His dad loved Oklahoma. It just was a perfect fit for most people. So I think the way this is trending is Oklahoma stands to be in a really good spot here. I think he's the number 18 overall guy for rivals. And look, if you get that guy, Colorado, Alabama wanted him, Florida State, like the world wanted him. And there's a reason why. I talked to somebody today that called him Sweet Feet. They said he has amazing feet for an offensive tackle. So, if nothing less, a potential, you know, Tyler Guyton esque type of tackle or guard, like he can slide inside, outside. He can play both. And that's the beauty of it. Beatonville loves those type of guys, and he would be an excellent, just a magnificent get, particularly a guy that can come in and start right away, Parker.
Yeah,
Like
certainly.
literally
And I
right
think
away.
I think that would be the expectation for a guy like Derek Simmons. You don't maybe have that expectation for Luke Baklenko
Yep.
as a younger guy, albeit a guy with starting experience. Derek Simmons, that's a guy that ought to be in your starting
Mhm.
lineup next
Yeah.
season, somewhere, regardless of where that is. And somebody that, if he puts it on tape next year, and let's say he does commit to Oklahoma, uh, he gets sharpened by Bill Bedenbaugh, he puts some good tape up, that could be an NFL draft pick.
The good news
Fair.
is Oklahoma still has Corey Robinson the second
That is
on
true.
Thursday as well.
That
So
is true. So
they
uh,
could take three at the end of the day. I don't think they planned on it, but they could.
they could. I think it's more likely just wind up with two. And at this point, Beklenko is one. Simmons looks to be the other,
Yep.
with Corey Robinson still pending. Let's flip over to the defensive side of the ball.
Mm-hmm.
It is Wednesday morning. Oklahoma is expecting to host a very coveted transfer defensive end later today.
Yep.
6'5", 259 pounds, formerly of Idaho State. I know, Idaho State. I get it, you FCS level up type of guy, and some people just hate dudes like that at face value. But uh, Logan George is a guy that has plenty of high-end P4 attention. Ohio
Mm-hmm.
State has offered. Texas A&M has offered. Missouri has offered. Utah has offered. And yet, Oklahoma is the school that gets an early crack at him after offering him just yesterday morning. So we're talking about barely
Yep.
a 24-hour turnaround here between offer and visit for George. Not entirely dissimilar to the Caden Woolard process a year
Yeah.
ago. Miguel Chavis just finds guys that he likes and that like him, and he can usually wrap things up pretty quickly. Woolard got a bunch of offers immediately upon hitting the portal, but Oklahoma sprung early. They weren't the first in his case. They weren't the first for George either, but Woolard clicked with Chavis, booked a visit, took the visit, didn't go anywhere else. So could this be a repeat with George? Of course, we're not going to know. He doesn't know anything about Oklahoma until he shows up, but certainly one worth watching here.
Yeah. Look, what do you have? Five and a
Five
half,
and a half
six sacks.
sacks.
Yeah. Last year for Idaho State. He's going to have 2 years of eligibility left. And I think that is something that is key, right? Like when you're looking for a defensive line guy, or you don't really like the 1 year rentals, you'd prefer to have 1 or 2, 3 years left. That's why he's a perfect fit. I'm looking at his stats right now, just pulled it up. 53 tackles last season. Look, if you can get somebody that just be serviceable, right? If he comes in and he's somebody that can be in the rotation, I think that's a win for Oklahoma because, again, I talked to somebody today that said straight up, do you know who's going to be the next R. Mason Thomas? And I said, I'm going to assume you're talking about Danny Okoye. And they said, you're exactly right. It is Danny Okoye. That guy is going to be special. All he has to do is stay out of his own way and stay healthy, and he will be special. And so Oklahoma's banking on the former, Rivals 250, Rivals 150, top 100 player in the country, Danny Okoye, to be that guy and potentially next year. So if you can get George to come in and be serviceable, be in the rotation, R. Mason Thomas, Danny Okoye, right? And you got George and potentially and whoever else they decide can play ball for Oklahoma next year at defensive end. And there's a lot of young talent, but I think you're setting up for a decent edge rush group once again for Oklahoma, and that's critical in the SEC. So he would be a really good get for Oklahoma. It's going to be interesting to see how this visit plays out, particularly with Ohio State after him as well.
And then the other position that we're watching closely here, well, two positions. One, kicker. Oklahoma has taken an interest in Western Kentucky transfer Lucas Carnero. So
I'll trust
that's
you. I don't pay attention much to that.
that's worth keeping an eye on. I mean, you got Liam Evans ready to step into that role
Yeah.
one way or the other. So if you get Carnero, great. I believe he was Conference USA Special Teams Player of the Year. So that would be a nice pickup. Not one you feel like you have to have, but
Mm-hmm.
always worthwhile to bring in an experienced leg if you can go
James
get.
Thompson as well, Wisconsin defensive lineman.
Oh
Um,
yes, that's right. So
he's
I
visiting
completely
Thursday.
glazed over defensive tackle there.
Mhm.
You got David Blay, of course. Rashawn Lawrence is off the board now. R.J. Jackson's off the board, but you bring up James Thompson. What do you think Oklahoma does there? Ashton Sanders just hit the transfer portal today, so you thinking just
Yeah.
one, or you thinking two?
Yeah, maybe two, and maybe they find somebody that I don't know that maybe they can get in the spring. I really don't know. David Blay would be probably the best bet that you could get as far as overall talent. But I don't know that you're going to end up with him. There's been a lot of things that have been dragging out there that haven't really put things in a positive direction yet. Yet doesn't mean it's not going to happen. So James Thompson, obviously I guess he's going to be a redshirt senior next year or a super senior, whatever you want to call it. Um, he doesn't have a lot of stats, but he's a defensive tackle. You don't need a lot of stats as a defensive tackle. You just need a big body. He weighs almost 300 pounds. He played in the Big Ten, so you know he's going to be really good, at least in the run game, and he's going to know how to play that. So um, you also don't need a lot of bodies, I think, because look, let's assume Dominic Williams returns, Parker. Do you really need a bunch of players at defensive tackle right now?
No, you don't. And that's exactly what I was about to bring up. If you want to argue that whoever Oklahoma lands at defensive tackle is a jag, then I'm just not going to hear that, Brandon, because they don't
There's a
need a
bunch of really
difference.
good players there.
Yeah, they don't need a difference maker at that position. I mean, I'll
Yeah.
call it like it is. They don't need a difference maker at defensive tackle right now. That room is arguably the deepest on the team. Dominic Williams, Jaden Jackson, David Stone, Grayson Halton. Is
Mm-hmm.
is there anybody else that's going to play a meaningful snap at that position, barring injury next season? Trent Wilson may prove he's too good to keep off the field in a rotational capacity, and who knows, maybe Marcus Strong takes a leap. But those four are going to be your core four at
Yeah.
defensive tackle. Those are going to be the guys that you're leaning on, and they're going to account for the overwhelming majority of the snaps between them. So if all Oklahoma gets in the defensive tackle room is a guy that most would consider to simply be a warm body, okay, I'm not mad at that. And then as we progress to the cornerback position, Brandon, Oklahoma's playing the waiting game with Ethan O'Connor, the
Mm-hmm.
Washington State transfer. Um, we'll see what happens there. Not entirely clear where he's going to wind up, but sources on the OU side have remained confident about their
Yeah.
chances to land him.
Yep.
And so once he's done with his batch of official visits, I figure we'll know before too long. But still does feel like, even though there will be several visits that will have taken place between his OU trip and his decision, it still would seem the Sooners are in strong shape with him.
Yeah. Look, I talked to somebody today that felt like they're hoping if Mateer does what everybody expects him to do,
Mhm.
that helps in a big way as far as, O'Connor and Oklahoma goes. It's interesting that he hasn't committed yet anywhere that he's gone. So it almost feels like he too is kind of waiting to see what Mateer does at the end of the day. And maybe that helps Oklahoma. I think when Mateer announces Parker, the domino effect is going to be a mad avalanche for Oklahoma. So we'll
Well, and
see. They're
that's
doing it
it,
on. They're visiting these guys on purpose. They're
and
all
it's a
coming in on
very
purpose at the
well,
same
two
time.
two things are worth keeping in mind with O'Connor. Like it's an easy detail to overlook, but he is Mateer's teammate or was
Yeah.
Mateer's teammate at Washington State. So Mateer locks in. It's probably going to have some sort of effect on Ethan O'Connor as well. And also,
Yeah.
he was, I shouldn't say he was a lightly recruited guy because he had P4 offers, but he didn't have the big time offers coming out of high school. So a kid like that,
Mhm.
he becomes a big deal at a place like Washington State and gets in the transfer portal and is doing the whole process over again. Man, I bet you there's a certain part of him that's just enjoying soaking it up.
hmm The
And
exact opposite of Chris Hudson, the wide receiver from Washington State, who was at Oregon and went to Washington.
mhm.
That one's probably going to go by quicker. So yeah, no, you're right. Just living it up, man. Enjoy the process.
Hey, listen, folks, OUinsider.com is the place to be because if you think we just fed you chock full of information over the course of this video, however long it's been, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever, there is a wealth of additional information, behind the scenes intel, visit plans, details that we don't and can't reveal on the YouTube side. All of that is available to you for just a few bucks a month at OUinsider.com. We hope to see you over there. It is a vibrant online community of Sooner fans as well, folks interacting on the message boards with each other, each and every day, talking about all things OU football and college football in a broader sense. We got fantastic basketball, softball coverage, whatever's in season at the University of Oklahoma, we're covering it, but we never take a break from covering OU football and
No.
recruiting. Hope to see you over at OUInsider.com and hope to add you to our outstanding and ever growing list of members on the site. Certainly subscribe to this YouTube channel, if nothing else. That doesn't cost you a dime. And you're not going to wind up on a mailing list. You're not going to get spam texts, none of that. Just helps us out, helps us continue to bring free content like this to the table for you on a regular basis. So for Brandon Drum, I am Parker Thune. This has been the OU Insider Portal Blitz. Now we wait on John Mateer. We'll see you soon.